In their ideal world, they would light a wide master, and it'd be so beautifully lit that you could just go into coverage and not change a thing. So, some of the cool look was done in post because a lot of the ceiling was lit with tungsten light through sort of a grid cloth. You bring in a diffusion frame or an extra light for the face, but you let the original light still spill onto the background the same amount. So you're only changing the face, but not changing the background. It's the old saying that perfect is the enemy of good. You don't want to make things so flawless looking that you kind of kill all the energy on the set.
So after having done over 42 feature films, in your wealth of experience, how do you work out the lighting for a scene? Do you start with diagrams?
No, I work with diagrams when I have to pre-light a set with the gaffer or we're rigging a night exterior or some big location like that. Then we'll look at a map and set drawings and discuss where we want to rig. But if it's, once the set's been rigged with lights or preset or it's a location or you brought your lights, it's really about the blocking rehearsal and then seeing where the lights can go, because on my current show we do a lot of elaborate 360-degree Steadicam moves. So half my problem or most of my problem is just simply figuring out where I can even put a light and will it look good and will it be the right look for the scene. Beyond the practical considerations of where can a light go, and in those cases you have to work closely with the production designer to give you lamps and windows and sources that you can use in the scene, and then work with the director to stage around those lamps and sources. But yeah, I try to light the set in my head because I have to plan for all the coverage too. So it's not just lighting a master. I have to think, if I light it this way, it'll take this long to relight for a close-up, or when we turn around and look the reverse direction, it'll take this long to clear the lights that I have in the room versus out the window. And you're trying to be efficient, so you're trying to plan all your changes in lighting throughout the coverage of the scene and for the whole day, so you don't come up with a lighting plan that's so complicated to change each time that, if I light this wide shot with this light, then when I go into close-ups, all I need to do is bring in this light on a stand, or I just need to throw a diffusion frame in front of it. So it's all that you have to sort of try to think in advance.
We fire and we lose the non-compete. You want to walk down some hotel hallway and see Mary Wells sitting on Don's lap the next time you go in to present?
I think most cinematographers, partly for if they're going for a naturalistic look, but also if they want to save time, in their ideal world, they would light a wide master, and it'd be so beautifully lit that you could just go into coverage and not change a thing. That's always like every cinematographer's dream, like I don't have to touch it once I do the wide shot. It's like David Watkin used to light his sets like that. He would light beautifully these big, softly lit wide shot masters, and then they wouldn't change anything. They'd go into coverage and it'd still work. But it's not possible always, because either that forces your lights into the ceiling or it forces them out the windows. If you're seeing a lot of the room, depends on how wide angle the lens is and how much the camera is moving. So the more the camera sees the room, the more the lighting may be a bit compromised in terms of when you go in tighter, it doesn't look as attractive as it should be. It's the light's a little too harsh or coming from too high an angle. But you can't change it too much when you go into coverage, because then it won't match. So the limits of how much of a cheat you can do between a wide and a close. If there's enough of a change in frame size and camera angle, you can change the light more. If it's a subtle change in frame size and angle, then it can't change too much, because especially if there's no intercut to a reverse angle or something else. So you have to kind of guess as to what the editing pattern might be, and can you get away with the change, because after this wide, you're going to cut to a reverse angle of someone coming through the door, and then you're going to cut to a close-up of the reverse angle again. So you have enough of a change to change the lighting. But, ideally, you design a beautifully lit master, or a master where the lighting doesn't need to be changed. You do a master like a dinner table scene, you're often let's say, have a softbox over the table. So everyone's sort of lit as if it's the chandelier. And it looks great in a wide shot. When you go into close-up, everything, their eyes are very shadowed, and it can give them sort of baggy eyes. And so you want to make that top light still toppy, but a little more frontal and a little softer. So you think, well, am I going to slide this whole softbox towards camera so it becomes more frontal, and then lower it so it gets into their eyes more? Or maybe the softbox you've rigged above the table can't be moved easily like that. So then you think, oh, maybe I turn off half the softbox that's right over their head and then add another softbox that's closer to camera that wraps that ceiling light a little more over the lens. And then maybe I put a diffusion frame to blend my extra light so that it looks like one light still. It's just that one light shifted slightly a few feet, So every situation is different, in terms of what you've rigged and how you can change it. If you light, let's say, the face with a certain soft light to the side, like I'm lit by this window right now. If it was an artificial light and I say, oh, let's just switch to a closer, softer light, and I turn off that light and I bring in a closer, softer light, what's going to happen is the wall behind me will go darker because it's the same light lighting me as lighting the distant background. So now if I change the light on me, I'll change the background and it'll look different, and I'll have to relight the background as well, which is time consuming. So sometimes that's why you bring in a diffusion frame or an extra light for the face, but you let the original light still spill onto the background the same amount. So you're only changing the face, but not changing the background. So you have to think about how you modify that light. Sometimes you are doing something, you've changed the ambience in the room completely, and suddenly the contrast goes higher or something. You have to compensate. It's a lot easier now with digital because you see everything on the monitor, and you could say, and I'll have the DIT save a frame of every setup. So when I go into coverage, I'll say, just put up the master again for me, and I'll click back and forth between my new shot and the master shot, and I go, it just feels like we got darker, or it feels like that's falling off faster than it was before, and I'll make an adjustment. In the film days, I'd have to do that with my eyes, with my light meter. And you do get trained to use your eyes to see these things. And when I light a set today, I try to light it by eye first. I walk through the whole set, and I'll even set levels on lights. So I'll put a double in that light, dim that one down to 50%, do this just to my eye so it feels balanced the way I feel it should be before I go to the monitor and start doing it by monitor, where I'll say, oh, that's still too bright, go down another 10%, or I need something there, it's much darker than I wasn't looking over there when I did it by eye. So it's a hybrid sort of technique.
Whatever happens next, don't ever doubt you're a star.
Generally the problem with master lighting is either the light is too hard because you can't make it big and soft enough in a wide shot, or it's too high because you had to get it out of the frame. So you're often either lowering top lights or softening side lights more. So yeah, sometimes all you need to do is add an extra layer of diffusion, or sometimes you just need to wrap if you're lighting from the side, you just need to wrap it slightly more around by adding one more soft light next to it, and then putting some diffusion in front of both. And then the light that was more sideways is now more 3/4 but softer, but it doesn't jar you when you cut from the wide to the close-up. It's enough of a subtle change that it still has the same contrast ratio, and the background still looks the same and things like that. So, well, when you do a lot of camera movements, often the only place to light from is the ceiling. So we do a lot of soft top lighting with either if I can do it with ceiling bounces, I can, but often if you're doing 360, you don't have a place to hide a stand to bounce into the ceiling. So then I have to actually rig a soft light to the ceiling. So we're doing a lot with light mats. We have 2 8 light mat 8s, which are 4x4. We have a bunch of light mat 4s, which are 4x3s. So we're often screwing those into the ceiling and lighting from above, basically. But the Alexa camera has such a wide dynamic range that often, like in our apartment sets and other things, when you shine a big light through a window through curtain shears, it just sort of fills the room with ambient light, and you don't get problem with clipping the way you would with some other digital cameras. So you can you get a lot of ambient bouncing from just one light coming through a window and hitting the ceiling and coming back down, or hitting the floor and coming up. So it's sometimes you see light on actors' faces and there's actually no light there. It's just ambient reflective light from the room. And all our sets generally have ceilings on them, so I don't have a problem with the contrast going up because the ceiling's missing.
Heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour.
Can we talk about the lighting and the look that you've established in Westworld?
Well, Westworld is sort of split between the Western scenes and the laboratory underground sequences. And it seemed, those were lit in the original pilot by Paul Cameron. So he sort of established the look in the pilot of this first season. And the labs were based on a real location that they had adapted for the pilot and then rebuilt on stage after that, which was it was actually department store floors that they were using at the Pacific Design Center. These black corridors that had these single strip of fluorescent tubes running down the center, and so they designed their sets based on this series of black corridors with glass-walled laboratory sets, and so Paul had set that all up, and then they recreated it for the series. And the biggest problem there is simply that all the walls are glass. So just trying to light anything not from above is very hard, because the glass walls, you end up covering lots of the off-camera glass walls with black cards, so that at least you're not getting triple reflection problems bouncing or seeing the camera and things. So, but they had to start putting Post-it notes and warning signs on all the walls, because so many of us, people broke their noses walking through that set, because it was a big black room with glass dividers between separating pieces of the room. And I walked right into one of them full on, and I almost broke my nose. I broke my camera. I had a still camera on me at the time, and then within like 10 minutes, the script supervisor ran right into the wall too. And so they started putting, before every shot, we had to take down like dozens of signs. Every glass wall had a sign on it saying warning. And then before we roll camera, someone had to run around and take all the signs off the walls so we could shoot and put them back up again, because we were constantly running into them. So, some of the cool look was done in post, because a lot of the ceiling was lit with tungsten light through sort of a grid cloth in a kind of cement honeycomb design. And so it was lit more white, and then in color timing they cooled it off a little bit, so to contrast with the outdoor scenes, which were dusty and brown, being out in California in the sunshine. So that was the sort of general approach.
So this cyan blue light in the laboratory, is that just fluorescent and then it's color timed in post?
Well, you'll see, so there's a subtle mix of color temps in the lab scenes, because it was based on the original location in the pilot. The fluorescents in the hallways are warm white fluorescents, so they're white with a greenish tint, the little tube that runs down the center of the halls. The honeycomb ceiling above the set is tungsten light, like maxi brutes pushed through grid cloth, so that's white. But there are these LED ring fixtures that hang above each room, which are daylight balanced LEDs. So you've got this mixture of blue LED ring lights mixed with white tungsten light with the slightly greenish yellow fluorescent light in the hallways. And so it was always tricky when you were lighting scenes. Do you want more of the green or less of the green, or more of the white or more of the blue? But that was something that was established, so we had to sort of work with that. But I think in color correcting, they kind of played everything towards the colder side in general.
And for the exteriors, are you bringing any 18Ks, or are you always just backlighting, bouncing, and diffusing the sun?
Almost always. We shoot so many cameras and so many action scenes, it's almost all natural light. So we try to coordinate things to shoot in backlight. So we do our reverse angles, and when the sun's the other side of the street, and we're still in backlight if we can. That was sort of a general rule on the show. The producers, creators, they wanted most of the day exterior work to be backlit, and they would work very hard to try to turn actors around or scenes around to keep backlit to the sun when they could. And then once you do that, might bring in something bounce from the side to augment it. I did have one street scene with Anthony Hopkins where it was going to be overcast in the morning and sunny afternoon, and I tried with our gaffer put two 18K Arri Maxes on a crane behind one of the Western sets to try to backlight people when it was overcast, but it wouldn't barely show up. It was just not bright enough to compete with the daylight overcast light. But when the sun came out in the second half of the day and we had real backlight, and then it set, those Arri Maxes behind the building were bright enough to recreate the sun right after it set. So basically, I shot into magic hour with the Arri Maxes creating the same sun effect on part of the street. So it matched pretty well to the scenes with the real sun. Between the skylight at magic hour and the Arri Maxes on the crane, it looked like the sun was still up. So we got another half hour shooting in that way.
And I want to make good on that promise.
The promise of what? There's no escape from this place. You know that.
Isn't there?
In your opinion, what do you think makes a good cinematographer for the production?
Well, you have to have a broad range of skills. That's just sort of a given. You have to be very flexible and very time conscious. So, this basically, you will not get ahead if you're not aware of the clock. You can be the greatest lighter of sets in the world, but if you consistently fall behind schedule every day because you're slow, then the people just can't afford to have you there. So it's very important to be good and fast. You can't just be good, and you can't just be fast either. You have to be both. So that's always a problem. And I think going to work every day, you just feel like you have a gun to your head because it's the pressure to make your day it never stops, big or small projects. So I think you have to be, comfortable with that, but you have to admit that reality that there's always a time pressure issue, and you have to be good at dealing with that. Whether it means being more organized, pre-planning, or just be more nimble and flexible, or learning to keep things simple. You have to have a lot of tricks in your pocket to deliver a nice looking shot but do it quickly. I think that's important. It's very much a people-oriented industry, so you have to work with others, and you have to ultimately, if you're doing narrative projects, you have to keep in mind that what you do is less important than what the actors and the writers and the directors are doing. You're there to support them rather than to show off or support yourself. So I think being sensitive to the needs of what the actors need and the director needs, and helping them achieve that is important. I think that'll also get you rehired if you work well with directors and you make actors look good, and things seem to move quickly. I think every cinematographer has very high standards. So in their head, they imagine this perfectly shot, lit scene, where the camera moves is perfect and the lighting is perfect and everything works out perfect. But the reality is, it's like, it's not quite as good as I imagined it was going to be, or this part here is a little rough, but I could take 15 minutes to fix this or improve this, but I don't have 15 minutes, because if I take 15, I lose 15 somewhere else in the day and it will add up. So I have to, there are many times where you say, oh, it's good enough. It's not perfect, but it's the old saying that perfect is the enemy of good. You don't want to make things so flawless looking that you kind of kill all the energy on the set and the time. That's the other thing you have to remember. There's a certain momentum that happens on a film set, and you want to keep it going, and you don't want it to be bogged down into lots of fixing of little things that maybe makes a shot 1% better, but kills everyone's energy on the set trying to get that 1%. So yeah, there's always compromise, and sometimes things are better than you imagined. It does happen, especially when you're dealing with nature, where you get the most amazing sunset or the perfect sky and the lights coming through is amazing, and the sets and the costumes are just so beautiful, and you just think, I hardly had to do anything, and it looks incredible. So there are moments where things turn out better than you can imagine. But there are plenty of times where you've created this image in your mind, and then on the day, what you come up with is not quite there.